I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to I Mix What I Like. And for our part two of our discussion on Southern fried rice. Is that right now? I can't even remember the right title of it.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I can. And that, of course, everybody, I hope you can hear me, is
Yeah.
Sudip Bhattacharya, who is joining me here again for our discussions. Actually, let me do it. I like it better this way. As we continue uh sharing with you our public meetings regarding this ongoing project, looking at Black and Asian economics and the narratives around those issues. Um, I am aware, as folks come in live, that there are a number of other things happening. Obviously, more importantly, in the world, and other lives and other things happening. So it's all good. I'm not mad if folks show up here, check this out later, and because I admit this is far less serious. And now that I've completed the series, I'm like, man, we're in trouble. But so that said, but everybody, like, share, subscribe, support, however you'd like to. Thank you very much for again joining us. And Sudip, welcome once again, and feel free to say anything in welcoming, reintroducing yourself. Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah. No, sorry for just.
Oh, I didn't even see you were asking to test your mic first.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
I
yeah.
missed
It's
that.
fine.
But we're
Isn't it
good.
work?
We're good.
You can hear me? Okay, perfect. I don't even know. It says it's a blue light. I just figured my partner gave me this as a holiday present because I've been in. I don't know. I
Well, we
talk a lot.
thank them very much. You sound better. It sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she is kind of like my mini manager because she watches the shows when she can, and sometimes she's in the next room messaging me, being like, "Talk to the mic. Make sure to smile." And like, I think last time when it was echoing, she was like, "I think I need to get this guy a mic." So just stuff
Well,
like
we
that.
appreciate that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
look, as someone who has relied heavily and is literally only still on this earth because of my wife,
Mm.
let go and let partner.
I and we'll
That's
get
my
into the
motto.
show, but I do agree with your I think what you said before about relationship advice. Just I found someone who, yeah, smile back, you smile at them, and then you just
Yeah,
stick
that
with
was
that
all it took.
person.
That was
Yeah,
all it
that's
took.
all. I
That was all
felt
it
I
took.
really vibed with that. I was like, yeah, that's really my philosophy as well. So it was like, yeah, you find someone who's great, and you just
Hold
not
on.
you, yeah, exactly. No, that's so true. You just hold on to them and be like, oh my god. And when they're firing up into the sky, doing all the amazing things they're doing, you just hold on for
Just
dear
hold
life
on.
in a
Hold
good
on.
way. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And when in doubt, just accept that they're right, and they're probably going to do something good for you. And
Yep.
more times than not, it works. It works.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
no, I just want to first say thank you for watching. I mean, I know this is part of our project. So again, just to remind everyone, this is not just like an adventure of like, oh, this is silly, let's look into it. This is just part of our project. Really quickly, I also I've been having a tough time. I'm really glad I watched this show. I tried rewatching some of the episodes last night. I've watched the show like at least an episode a day, a little bit, just to like absorb the brilliance of it, and sit with it and ruminate and think, wow, that's like Fanon. But I did start to rewatch some of it because there were certain things which we'll talk about that really stood out to me. Because usually for me it's like about like why am I doing this, not in an existential way, but like why am I watching this, what are the lessons that are there that people would glean, and hence like why it's like also like what is the show promoting, which it's a rather political show. There's moments where it makes the case for it being political. So yeah, I'm just glad to be here and appreciative and really excited to get into this amazing show.
No, and so I agree, and thanks for the reset and reminder, just so folks are clear that. So speaking for myself, I do watch a lot of stupid stuff. So I don't want to claim to be on some pedestal, but this stupid stuff was specifically watched for our project. So I would this level of I wouldn't have subjected myself to this otherwise. I don't think, especially after the first episode. But I did it differently. I watched it all in one sitting because all the they're 12-minute episodes roughly, and I just wanted to get it over with. And then I took notes as I watched. And oh oh but I like I like how you put it. It does. I was wondering to what extent it would do this. It does at some points attempt to take itself seriously and make some points. And this is where I do think our project, they start pushing the buttons for our project, because this is, as I understand what we're doing, and my motivation for it is to assess the claims and the comparative claims and their political impact on Black and Asian communities, related to how Black and Asian communities engage economics and or relate to the economy, so on and so forth. And then as we're going to talk about in our project, and a little bit maybe even here today and in these ongoing discussions, even in my summary of our project, and the more I'm learning and just in diving into it, the more I'm realizing how ridiculous it is to use the descriptor Asian, and why so few, in even in the field of economics that I'm wildly critical of, they don't use these categories in this way. So this is one of the things that I'm having to even learn in methodologically, in doing some research on this, is adjusting search terms, because it starts to have to become, how do South Koreans relate to Black American? How do Pakistani communities relate? It can't, this, in other words, it can't just be Asian, but what in the popular parlance, so to speak, and in so many of the barbershop discussions and debates and YouTube platforms, it just becomes, well, why don't we just do, we don't do what the Asians do.
Mm-hmm.
The Asians do all of this. The Asians do all of that, and then it become, and then there becomes the you can start to see the construction of the myth and the narrative and the nonsense. So anyway, all right, how would you like to proceed this morning? I'll follow your lead on this.
Oh, I don't know. You take it away. I mean, I wrote a lot. It's a little less structured than Rich Dad Poor Dad, just because I don't know why. Maybe just I mean, it's better than that, to be honest. Rich Dad Poor Dad. I did have one line where I do want to reference, because I think ultimately that's where I landed. Was like, I think I was like thinking to myself, the one theme that kept coming up in my head is like Daniel Patrick Moynihan is like smiling up from below, like
Instead of rolling over in his grave, he's like
yeah,
thumbs up. He's like, yes,
from below, from
from
beneath
below.
us. Yeah, he just thumb, because there's a lot of things that he would thumb up, in
Yeah.
certain respects. Yeah, but you go ahead. I'll follow your
Well,
lead.
I'd actually like. Can we start with what? Can you just elaborate on that point? Like, why do you say that? And then yeah, and then I can. Uh, how does Geechee say? I can veggie back. I can vegan bacon back off of that.
Yeah, sure. Why? Well, the last image we have, is there's a lot of like Black relationship dysfunctionality
Mm-hmm.
and missing male tropes
Mm.
and randomness. Like one of the episodes, and we'll talk more about this too, but because there's a lot here I don't want to miss, because I wrote notes for each episode almost. But the last scene, I'm sorry for anyone who's willing to watch this, there's spoilers, is that they arrive at, Coco and her friends arrive at Tammy, her cousin's, like her cousin is living in Oaksville,
And
Georgia, which
Coco
is
is the Korean. Just so we're reminding folks, this
the
is
Korean woman.
just quick. Coco is the Korean adopted by a Black American family who had been in Korea, who is military family, who couldn't
Yes.
have a child of their own and adopted this child. But as I want to ask you, then how is it then that she has a sister that's of the same age that she's grown up with? But I will come back to that. We can come back to that.
We'll come back to, and also there's a lot there because I read some not interviews, sorry, I read some reviews, like just two
Mhm.
or three, and one of them also had some good points about Coco's own experience of being an adoptee in a certain context of essentially, like, American Empire, which is relative to what we're talking about, and that's not really touched on at all. So if there was a way to go with that character, that would have been quite interesting, right, from both ends. But just, I think this is a place to start, is at the ending where Coco's on her way with her friends because she finds out her cousin, her friend, is in Atlanta. She was meant to visit Coco at campus and also, I guess, visit her boyfriend. The person, also, Tammy, is pregnant. And so her boyfriend, who is also Black, got her pregnant. And clearly in the show's discussion, this guy is not to be trusted, is kind of like a bad guy. And then the last scene is they arrive at this random like parking garage area where you see with the headlights pouring in, clear as day, the guy kind of like Tammy fighting with this guy and the guy like cursing her off, which is supposed to be the boyfriend. So you were left with that as a lasting image, along with the cop who comes, which will go. But what stood out to me was that, because there's another scene that was quite random to me, like one of the two suitors. I'm trying to be very formal because it's a very formal show. But one of the two suitors for Coco, which is also, it's very problematic because she's like getting a lot of black male attention randomly, and it's weird because she's, not to be mean, but she doesn't prove herself to be smart as everyone says she is, and she doesn't do a lot of studying as she claims to do. Her roommate does studying, and they clown her for that. But anyway, there's one guy, which we'll get into, who also has a very weird change in his personality from episode 5 to 6 or something, where he goes from liking her and wanting to date her. He's the guy who took her out to the restaurant, and then suddenly he's in the rap booth talking about how he wants to get an Asian girl and a Spanish girl. What That's fine. I know people do that, and that's a thing that happens to Asian women, East Asian specifically. But what stood out to me too was, like, I felt it was random how his character went, because it didn't seem at all natural that he went from being like, hey, why aren't you like meeting up with me again, and coming off as a little bit more down to earth and trying, to now just being a regular guy, again, black male guy who is like clearly just misogynistic, and it was very weird. So it was like coupled with everything else, and there's also a black male professor who shows up twice and then just disappears. Like there's like a disappearing act for a lot. Again, I'm not trying to do that as a focus, because a lot of the focus is also on how Joy has been treated in the show, who is this more heavyset, darker skinned black woman, and it's confounding to me how they treated her for the majority of the show, but also in a sense still treat her and her politics as silly. So that's just my first few thoughts.
No, so first of all, to your point about how black men show up, I have to admit I started to have to check myself for some sort of unwitting, like somehow did I can't. My thoughts got all jumbled up, but I sometimes started thinking, did I get red pilled here? Because I started thinking, wait a minute, every heterosexual male and heterosexual relationship seems demonized in this series, where the only relationships that seem to be promoted are the lesbian relationships that are held, and then there are either no black men, or the black men that show up are shady and out of nowhere shady, to your point. Like there's no character development that leads you to believe that and so I have to admit, I was like, wait a minute, what's happening here? Like I started like checking myself, like did I did I get red pill? But it is also true, like some of the way they're approaching this, and same thing with the other I forgot her name, but the other sorority sister girlfriend that they have,
Mm-hmm.
who gets an STI
Yes.
from the boyfriend she's dating. And like in one scene you see, and this is sort of where I was getting my red pill fears from, because I was like, wait a minute, we see this like almost loving, friendly relationship between two lesbian women, although their relationship goes sideways too. So
I
like,
was gonna add that
yeah, they
actually.
do go sideways, but at
Yeah.
this point it hadn't gone sideways yet. So I
Mm-hmm.
was just, and they kiss each other, and then here comes the other woman talking about, this man gave me a disease,
Right. Right.
and I was like, wow, I was like, we're going way into this. I was like, this feels pretty heavy handed here. And then they show you that I'll also admit this is way outside my lane, but I will. This is where again, checking myself for this again, all the criticism of the red pill. Maybe I adopted some of it, but that one of the women in the lesbian relationship is meant to perform as the man,
I see. Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
way she treats her girlfriend. She
Mm-hmm.
does that stereotypical, I'm playing you, you're just here for my pleasure, I'm dating whoever. And then it's kind of like the reverse jealousy thing when she sees her with the other girlfriend and all that. And then it was starting to read to me like, are you just taking like the stereotypical male female relationship, putting it in a female female relationship? All the while there are no positive black males in this that I could. Anyway, that's just so. But one of the problems, what I really ended up focusing on after I again just checked myself on this red pill. Did you want to respond to that real quick? My bad. I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
mean
Yeah. No, I just
go
want to
ahead.
say one thing. I do
Yeah, go
want
ahead.
to note, like, so the majority of the show's characters are female. We're two dudes. Like, there are things that we won't get, and I think, for some, because there was a lot of hate on the show from men, women, however they identify. This is
Yeah,
not a
that is
popular
true. We're
show.
not alone in hating on this
Yeah,
series.
yeah. So we want to make that clear. I'm not trying to say this is a male
Right, right.
female
We're not
divide.
breaking ground.
No, this is a cross gender
Nobody
identity.
likes this.
Nobody, Asian Americans and African Americans don't like it. Like, they don't. There's a review I'll bring up from an outlet I've written for that I thought was pretty interesting. But I do want to say, I agree. But the one thing I want to say, it extends into just over, because the lesbian relationship also this show is very outdated also in how it treats queer love. Like, it also treats it as just like queer people just have sex with each other and don't have, like this one person, the queen or the homecoming queen or whatever, the sorority lead. It's a very typical story. If she wants to keep her front facing life, which is more like,
Right.
I am that person, I'm put together, I'm part of, and the whole women's excellence club we should get into.
We will.
And then,
Yeah.
and then the treasure, who's the RA, who's supposed to be a little bit of that person, but I would say she's actually quite loyal. It's the woman who is part of the women's excellence club, who's maybe more femme presenting, who like at the last episode has them having sex in a booth at a party.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, but I just want to say, dysfunctionality for all characters is like, it fundamentally works on two levels, and the only black male figures who are indeed worthy of like some sort of like praise is, one is dead, the father, who doesn't come up at all really as much, and the other guy is
I
the
don't think
black
we've heard anything about. I don't remember hearing anything about him after the initial introduction of the story.
Oh, he's mentioned again, but it's very subtle.
Oh,
like,
no.
he's mentioned with the professor, who like, oh, that's what my dad says.
That's what my
me.
dad would have done. That's right.
Which I thought was like, oh, interesting. We're gonna go into this because they also presented him, and the lighting was really bad. Like, I couldn't see his face quite, because the way that they were doing lighting, it was like the show was kind of a mess in terms of production too.
Yeah.
But when he turned around, I was like, oh, they're trying to do like he could be that figure or someone interesting enough. But then he also just disappeared. There's a lot of loose threads. The show doesn't work politically, and it doesn't work art-wise, which we could also discuss if they do blend. But I think also writing-wise, there's a lot of loose threads that's just left hanging, just completely. And just really quickly, I do think, again, it's about black people overall, women, men, however, because the woman who gets the STI very serious conversation, which which is important. But when I rewatched it, they do kind of intimate, because Coco says, "Be careful who you're dealing with." So they kind of intimate that she made, again, a bad choice. So they
in the man that she picked.
So there's also a condemnation of her. I just wanted to state that as well.
Yeah, actually, now that you mentioned, I do remember that. And to your point, they do. To be, actually, I have a couple of notes about where I think that there are some attempts at least taking themselves seriously or doing even something pointing in the right direction. And I did think even that conversation they were having about how the STI. I'm trying to think about the YouTube regulations here, but that how her STI was transmitted to her, the particular method, and this sort of the removal of the condom post, in the sex has begun, then he takes the condom off and just sort of imposes himself mid coitus.
Right.
And this is, I thought that was actually an important discussion to have. But again, it's again, what I was stuck in was it has to be in the context of us having no positive Black men involved in and I shouldn't say no, but few or almost none, and certainly to the extent that there's any positive portrayal, it's like it's deep in the background. To your point, the father, the non-present, dead, intermittently at best referenced father. And I do want to go back to that question. What did I miss here? Because I didn't go back and rewatch it, admittedly, but I did find myself getting stuck on this point. How were they not able to have children, but they have a sister for Coco to grow up with of the same age? They graduate from high school the same year.
That's not her sister. I rewatched it. It's her cousin from another mom. Because she does say, when I rewatched episode 1, she does say, and I just want to say, the rewatching it helps because it is hard to keep track of characters.
Right. You're right.
Because no, it's the show's fault still. It runs through characters really fast. And you don't get a real sense of people. So watching it the second time is when I picked up like that first scene that I know you were like a huge fan of, where they were, about to drop off. You were just like, oh my God, this is so touching. Like,
well, that's where I had to, it was so touching.
Yeah, because you were crying too much. That's why you stopped. It wasn't about like you're just weeping or it was too much tears. So you're just like, oh my God, this reminds me of the same experience I had dropping my kids off. Oh my God. So, so when I listen to it, she does, and it goes back to the Daniel Patrick Moynihan thing, because in it, she does say, man, that blah, blah, blah. I'm also like an excellent student, but I made this choice of getting pregnant, essentially. I don't want to end up like my mom. So it's maybe the mom, like Coco's mom, who knows? But it's a different thing.
So she wasn't talking about Coco's mother.
No. It was someone else. She calls her cousin. And it could be familial. It could be just friends, but it's a different person. But what I find interesting about that respect too is like, I mean, there's so many things like that. It's funny. Like Fanon did come into my head watching this show because I wanted to connect it to some of the people that we'll also end up referencing here and there about the work we're trying. Like what's being produced and put in front of us is this kind of stuff. What is required, especially with Maduro being. That's the thing. The timing of it was perfect because I watched most of the show prior to this whole horrific thing that's happening. Because otherwise I would also feel quite silly, like just watching this and thinking like, this guy's, he's a badass, but he's like being humiliated. This is what's happening in fascist America. But also the show also, like I had to look up, like I looked at when the show started, like the finale was just 2 months ago. There's no real discussion about anything that's really contemporary in a very, like, Palestine. Like, there's a lot of HBCU students who are involved in Palestine organizing. There's a lot of there's none of that. So it's like very much like, maybe in the end, this is the fitting show that one needs to view right before watching Al Jazeera English as I did, where I'm seeing this horrific thing, and then you remember the show existing, and they don't even touch upon that, like not that, but Palestine, which has happened. The genocide's been going on for 70 plus years, but the latest one is for 3. So there is some deeper connection, but it was difficult to watch this and not think like, what is it that people desire and need, and what instead of art, what kind of art they actually receive.
So that is a good point. I thought that the show was attempting to show its politics by addressing this issue of I guess police brutality light at the end.
At the end, yes.
And but so now, so it's interesting you said that. My thought regarding the HBCU Palestine thing was that this does make sense. That if they had even just one scene where students had some discussion of wanting to protest but being told by the administration not to, that might have satisfied. So for instance, because I think about, the campus I'm on, there's it's never been the most politicized campus, I'll admit that. But the administration was very clear after October 7th, at your own risk. If you think you're going to get yourself on TV and have one of your little moments like these white kids around the country, be careful. And remember, this is me interpreting the announcements, by the way. They didn't obviously say it this way, but I thought it was very clear. And we talked about it in my classroom that it was very clear. You can protest, you can stand right here. And they literally had a map with a circle on it. You can stand right here. And here's what you can say. You cannot call out any specific politic. You cannot call out any specific nationality or group. And you cannot have any overt criticism of Morgan State University. And you can only do it right in this one circle. And it has to be pre-approved. And, so like, it was like, and then it was all these veiled threats about grades and being expelled is not the right term, but removed, and so on and so forth. So in other words, the subdued level of protest on my one HBCU campus could have been explained in part due to the specific levels of repression that were engaged almost immediately by the administration. So they could have just in one line thrown that away and then got back to what is often the case, more routine discussions of relationships, right, pledging, whatever else that they were going to get into, because that is largely what has gone on Morgan State's campus, in part because of the administration crackdown on even the potential for unrest. So, but that said, this isn't this thing isn't going to do that, because as let's see, as I was pointing out, one of the standard ways of this actually relates to my point in my own criticism of how HBCUs show up in mainstream pop culture, that almost exclusively the discussions about the campus are relegated to what we saw in this series: relationships, pledging, step shows, hanging out in the calf, issues of social issues. Very little of it has to do with certainly the politics of the institution, the intellectual work that goes on at institutions. Like, there's very little of that. So I took particular notice, for instance, when we're introduced to the classroom, Coco, by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt myself again on this, but I keep saying her name and wanting to get back to this. You have an Asian woman named Coco who ends up dating this black man named Cooley.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I know it's not Chinese, and I know it's
Yeah,
not this,
yeah,
that, and
yeah,
third,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
couldn't help it. I was like, because it's in a scene where she's criticizing him for taking his Asian date to an Asian restaurant.
Right, right, right.
So she's like, so this is really slick. You take me to a Chinese restaurant, it's like, and he's like, oh damn, I didn't. He's like, this is just what we, his whole attitude is like this. This is what we do. I didn't even think about it. But then I'm sitting there and I'm watching the back and forth. I'm like, and she's saying, I'm like, wait, Coco and Cooley? I just was like, all right, somebody's having fun. I felt like somebody was having fun somewhere, but I don't
Mhm.
really know. I don't know. All right. But when Coco shows up to go to the classroom and we see the classroom, and I remember thinking, oh, are we actually going to see a classroom? And immediately it's a hostile engagement because on the first day of class, and I thought this has never happened
Mhm.
or this is too much. On the first day of class, the professor locked the door at start of class. Now, 20 some years ago when I first started at Morgan, we did have conversations about this. Is this something that we would want to do to encourage students to be on time? And almost immediately it was, from people like me, one, this feels draconian. Two,
Right.
it also feels in some ways like a fire hazard. I don't even know. It feels,
Right, right, right.
and then three, let's be real. If we enforce attendance policies, every student's going to fail. So
Right.
let's just be real. So we need to find another way. But I was like, on the first day, my guy, on day one, you're locking the door and making this whole huge deal about her being late so that when he starts to have this conversation, which I do think is important, I was like, wow, it's because he wants to have a conversation about the history of the institution. But it's couched, and this is something that I would want to come back to with the roommate that I think is part of the trope here. It's framed as a hostile, negative. In other words, the intellectual, historical classroom experience that is rarely depicted at all, especially when it comes to HBCUs, is depicted only through hostility, where she's embarrassed for being late. He calls her out, and only later is there a more positive, brief rendition with a black woman professor who sees that she has some some intelligence or interest and pairs her to have her join, of course, to have all of that culminate in her joining a sorority.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I agree. I mean, you teach at a HBCU, so my experience is limited. But yeah, that was my first reaction anyway, because I was like, oh, you locked the door. And then, but also, I'm not trying to defend the guy, but Coco I wrote down, I think she was 40 minutes late. Not defending either way, but she was crazy late. But how do you lock
Was
the
it
door?
that late? I thought it was.
No, I think she said 40 or something crazy. I could be wrong.
I thought it was like 4. Maybe I misheard it.
No,
I
maybe
thought
I
she was
misheard.
not late at all, or not
But
that.
but your
Okay.
overall point is still valid. Just that
Mhm.
it's just ridiculous. Like all of it is just sounds like people who didn't attend class. That's what I was. Because at the end of the day, the show is run by or written by Nakia Stevens, who's an HBCU grad, and she has other writers there too. So also it goes back again to the other critiques we have repeatedly, which is lived experience does not entail a good show. Like, let's just be like, we don't have to deny somebody is not HBCU is just not like any college because it's more meaningful in many different ways. But it's like, it's like me saying, well, you don't have a Rutgers grad from the Asian American program, but what if like it's such a vast group? It doesn't mean they're talented or anyway. That's what was so striking to me. And then I do agree it was more hostile, but I thought it also followed through consistently with the theme of a rather shallow discussion of politics, because in both instances, yeah, he's like, what's on your, like, hello, so-and-so, Coco, Miss Robinson or Miss Jackson. Yeah, like you're here, and what we're talking about the origins of the school and what year, and then she's like wearing a sweatshirt with 18 92.
1890, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So he's like, "Oh, it's on your shirt." So that was it. And then a couple episodes later, again, there's only 7 episodes in this amazing series. Each one is between 12 to 14 minutes. Thank God, it's like 3 minutes of credits, and they go pretty fast. It's really about Coco coming to campus, trying to, again, in her claim, understand herself better from the comforts of where she grew up. I just want to set that up. So this is like a typical college show. But when the politics do trickle in, it is, you're right, quite hostile, but still the connective tissue between this black male professor and the black female professor, although it's maybe one removed from her, is still shallowness of like the discussion you'd expect from a college classroom, which I think speaks to the thing that Mitume and you and others have said, which is like part of, well, some of the movies we've also watched. It's like the Kugler kind of like, not virtue signaling, but like kind of nodding to something without wanting to be specific. Because I wrote down the quotes from the Woman's Excellence. I want to talk more about that. But in the end, also, if you think about it, right after the professor is impressed with Coco's like rather basic question, and then like invites her and this other black woman to come to the Women's Excellence Club, the rest of the series also shows the Women's Excellence Club, which was so confusing to me. And I wrote down, is this not a violation by the professor? Because it is extremely mean and horrible. So again, politics is treated as shallow and disciplinary, because in the end, she literally invited this girl and other girls to this thing that is suggestive, and they use this term in her class, liberation.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, it's about getting the older girls, I guess, food and doing the regular hazing. For any professor who's connected to that, that is what, like, it is a very cruel. There's nothing meaning from it. There was no sense of like, no knowledge drop. There's no specific names of people ever dropped. And not to explode your brain, because I with Joy, which you'll talk about, I also thought it was quite fitting subconsciously, speaking to all these political things about shallowness. The poster she had on her thing that I've kept mentioning was Malcolm X. I actually paused it. It's not just of Malcolm X. It's actually Denzel Washington, the movie poster, Spike Lee of Malcolm X, which was quite funny.
Wait, and this was in Joy's room, her
Yeah.
roommate?
Because I was like looking at the walls, because everything is like kind of like, I'm just trying to pay as much attention on the second watch to little things, and I was like,
wow,
I paused it. Yeah, I paused it. I was like, wait, that's not Malcolm X actually. Then I was like, oh, was I wrong? No, it's Malcolm X.
That's even more perfect.
Exactly, and I think subconsciously, who knows how the mind really works? It is exactly that. It's very performative and shallow. Like here you have concepts like this. Yeah.
I used to tell this story all the time. You know, years ago when I first started teaching, I remember I had a class where a student in one 50-minute class period referred to Malcolm as Denzel or Denzel as Malcolm. She conflated the two of them 3 times in that 50-minute period. And I used to raise this as a point that I think I hear you making here, that this is the, I think, intended impact of a lot of the pop culture, public opinion shaping, counterinsurgents, like a side war, whatever, propaganda that is meant to undermine our, because as they say in their own definition, the goal of counterinsurgency is to manipulate the signs and symbols of the target population. So if Malcolm becomes Denzel, or if Denzel becomes Malcolm, but in real life, Denzel doesn't do anything like Malcolm, then it's easier to water down and more liberalize and make vague and ambiguous the politics and the goals of people like Malcolm and the movements that they represent. Because what you just described is part of the conflation I was making notes of in a different way, where not really getting to this point, for instance, which I would have loved to have caught. So I should have watched it more than once. But it's like usurping and then conflating what it means to be political, to be radical, to be a revolutionary, to liberate. So liberation then becomes, to your point, a professor fraudulently engaging in sorority behavior, which is ultimately more about Black capitalist excellence, entrepreneurial nonsense, and so the way I was looking at it was that they were looking to again undermine what is supposed to be the intellect, what should be an appropriate intellectual professorial presentation of the academic and the intellectual
Right.
leaders of this institution. And they've turned it into, oh no, she's just another high level sorority sister girl who will turn around and promote the hazing of this underling group with no discussion of what liberation means in any real meaningful way, and no critical engagement of hazing, of these abuse and all of these institutions. So it's like, so again we get, so what the point I was trying to make is the professors at these institutions never get like that's completely get undermined in these depictions of HBCUs. And then, but I think your point is even better, that it's aided by the symbolic replacement of Malcolm with Denzel.
That's
because it's
and
like,
who's doing?
we're not here to be serious. We're here to symbolize and pretend that we're being serious.
Well, I think the show represents unintentionally, perhaps, but rather materially, the effects of 30 years of repression and 40 years of neoliberalism and the 40 plus years of people being political prisoners, like all the elders stuck. Like, this is what comes out.
Yeah.
So whether or not, I think Keke Palmer and Nakia Stevens are quite sincere, but that's not the question. The question is, sincerity or not, what does the machine produce as art? And I think it's also important that it's Joy. So again, by episode 1, we meet Joy, who is going to be the villain for a little bit. Well, also, again, I want to say to the audience, like, the show, I personally think you can have still a well-written show and maybe not a political thriving show. This is both not great. It's worse on the political end, but in terms of like the show writing, it does improve actually. Eventually, in my view, like it does suddenly get its little bit of its wheels turning by end of episode 6, 7. To be honest with you, oh my god,
6, 7.
I know, oh my god. No, I knew.
But we had to have we had to agree to leave it alone in 2026. It got so bad in my household, myself included.
No.
I'm totally brain rotted. It's a mess.
No, my partner does it. She wore a costume for that for her kids. And she does it all the time to me. So I instantly, when I said it, I was like, oh no, like it's like I just got a PTSD from that. But I just wanted to pull up a couple of images. I'm not going to play any of it. And I want to point those images out too with you, because it's like,
this is the sweater that the 1890
exactly
that she was wearing, and I just was I wanted to find a shot of that Malcolm X thing. This is Joy, her roommate, who. I don't know. I'm interested to hear you say more about your point about the improved writing. I don't think I would have caught that in my one setting review. But what I didn't like was that what they do with Joy is that they do. First of all, it's a version of that old stereotype trope of the heavyset sidekick,
right?
And darker skinned heavyset sidekick. Right. Then she becomes the, what I think has a long history in film targeting black. I'm sorry?
The caretaker, like you did mention that before.
Oh yeah, she's that too. But I was going to say that the long standing, the trope that bothers me for all these decades is she becomes the way to negatively distill what should be positive politics.
I was gonna.
So all of her criticism around the cosplay of an Asian being black, all of her criticism around I can't even remember that, studying, mistreatment of, sexual misconduct and police violence, like all of the issues that are raised kind of through her, that because she ends up becoming the co-pledgee with Coco as they join this Women of Excellence group. They end up being forced to work together and evolve their, budding friendship by the end of the series. But it's all depicted through this hostile interruptive. She's the loud, brash, dark, black, heavy set, so it's like in all the, from the very first episode, even in that first discussion where she's raising what I think are legit issues to raise, maybe not in
Right.
the way that she did it, but she's, all of the rest of the women around her, like, oh, all the black women, like, oh, come on, Joy. Oh, I was like, there you
I
go
know.
again. And I admit it because I felt the kind of thing because, for a lot of my life, that's how I get, met with in social circles when I bring my politics into. They're like, oh, there he goes again. Oh, can't we just have some fun? Here you go, Jared, ruining it again. And I'm like, but so it's just like, there it is again. She's supposed to, but she's, and I would also want to say, in my limited anecdotal experience, even as sometimes being the outsider in some particularly black nationalist settings, the criticism of my presence has never been that level of hostile. So I'm not saying,
I was going to say,
obviously, men, women, my physical, I don't know what the difference, there's a number of differences here, but it's usually been more polite, more respectful, or just unsaid. It's just made clear you shouldn't be here. It's never really, or it's raised with principled criticism. you know, Jared, let's talk about your mixture and your presence here. Or Jared, let's talk, maybe we do need to have a comment. And when I remember, a couple of organizations I joined initially at the beginning on the advice of the late, great Dr. James Turner, the founding director of Africana Center at Cornell University, Africana Studies, the research. He even told me a story once about a black woman who had been in this black women's group for years, meeting annually and talking and building as sisters, only to find out later that this woman had a white husband, and this messed up the dynamic of the group. And had she just divulged that or made that clear from the beginning, blah, blah, blah. So he was telling me, always make sure, I'm paraphrasing here, but his point was, make sure when you enter these certain black nationalist spaces that you acknowledge that folks know that you're mixed and you have a white mother and a Jew and this, that, and a third, and then, proceed from there. And 99% of the time it's been no problem, or it's been a polite, Jared, why don't you sit this one out? And allowing me still to engage the politics and an understanding of why this was being done, even if I didn't agree or whatever, but to depict. So again, they could have just raising these serious issues, I think, are legit. I think it's perfectly legitimate.
Right.
But to do it in a way that makes it automatically she's the antagonist, and automatically the audience is set up to say that whatever position she takes, I should disagree with, until the very end, when she's liberalized and softened and allowable, and now that Coco has I don't know, transcended something in the eyes of Joy, and vice versa, we can now find acceptance for something like that. That's
as a person, I want, that was there's so many weird things in it. That was my response. Like the other part of it too, where I'm, a person of color, but not black. And I've been in spaces where people were like, oh, maybe not totally trusting because of the dynamic between Asian and African Americans, including South Asians.
Well, you own all the stores in our communities.
Own the store. We're also now leading the FBI. No, the mayor of New York. So like, that's the funniest thing. It's like, wow, we're reaching peaks here, I guess. Although it's really funny to contrast the guy who has really big eyes to the guy who's like at least smiles a bit. But I think it's really funny. But
that's funny.
But I've never had that situation either. I mean, never is putting it lightly. I'm sure there's been times where maybe when I was younger, when we were all younger, maybe sometimes when we were just like figuring things out in our posting era, we're just like, no, you can't. But I've never really, like, I've obviously had situations. We're talking about that's the thing key here. We're talking about politicized spaces. I've obviously had like, some more than like nice interactions with people who were racist, who might be black or other kinds of brown.
Yeah, I'm not talking about every setting in every. No. Yeah.
But this is like a politicized space through a lens of a woman whose intention. And I was trying to say, like, I wrote down really quickly. Joey is also meant to represent the most radical end of black politics. Hence, the poster of Malcolm is quite like, I can expect that from maybe Coco, not Joy. So that's what was turning the wheels in my head. And then, like you said, the villain kind of stuff. It was like, bro, like. I've never had that in a politicized space with other Black members. Like, I've never had that. In fact, it's been quite the opposite. I'll always remember, like, I've taken Africana classes. There was never a moment, like, I've had that experience as a non-Black person, as an outsider. Never had I actually had some friends of mine who tried to make connections with me that I actually, like, rejected only because I thought they were being too nice. To like, there was one a guy who was a friend. This is like ages ago. Like, we're not friends anymore. But he had shown me, like, he printed out. This is the era that I grew up in. But he printed out a picture of, like, a Hindu monk who comes down from the hills and stuff, and they swim in the Ganges. And he printed it out for me, like, in a class I was taking called Black Africans in Science. So this is a predominantly Black space. I took this class because I was doing Africana studies as part of political science. And that was my experience. It wasn't hostility. I was like, there was a few white people there who we were hostile to because they were saying weird things. But then there was me. And I remember, like, there was a moment where there was, like, a back and forth early in the class. And I was like, oh, I'm sitting, like, it was not unintentional, but I was sitting behind one of the other Asian guys. I think he was East Asian. And there's all these, and they were, like, going back and forth. And I defended something that the Black students were saying, and I intentionally took my stuff and I moved over to the next side. And that was one thing. And then the next day, or whenever this one guy brought it up to me, someone who's Black, and he said, "Oh, look, this is so cool. This reminds me of, like, I guess some priests in Africa, parts of Africa, like the dreads and everything." And I was actually the harsh one. I was like, bro, this is going to be also for YouTube purposes. My family is Hindu, but we're part of the Communist Party. We're not really that religious. I do pray to Kali and stuff. I have a harsh view about priests in the Hindu faith and any faith. So I did say, like, that guy, I was young. I said, that guy probably did not bathe for a long time. I don't think we need to. So I was actually being the harsh one towards what I'm saying is, like, it was opposite. Everyone was actually quite, and even the friend group we formed, like, we went to a couple of classes together. So that was my experience learning Africana studies with professors. Like, they weren't like, "Why are you here?" They were more like, "Sudip, you mentioned this about your experience. Like, can you expand and make these connections?" And there were other East Asian kids who were literally taking those classes with me, who were like, "Let's do something like what the Black students are doing for us and with them." So this was, like, epically annoying to me on two ends. One, not my experience, and not a lot of the people's experience as non-Black people of color. I found that quite weird. And also, to Joy's thing, she's also representative of the radical end of Black nationalist politics. But, and we'll talk more, but I actually wrote down what she also said in episode 5, by the way, the little speech she gave to Coco. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean by the show improving, but also being quite confusing. Because in the end, the show kind of presents her as being the person who's supposed to bring reality to Coco's face. But I actually thought, why is it in episode 5? Why didn't you bring it into episode 2? Because then you'd expand into such an interesting space of, like, oh, we're really gearing up for what the show should have been.
No, but see, that's how I interpret it. That once you establish her as the villain, that by the time you introduce her of having any value politically, socially, or otherwise, it's right. I think undermined by the fact that she's the villain. It's like I wrote in my notes, it's the Killmonger effect.
Right.
Killmonger is supposed to be the hero, but you've undermined him by having him do what are supposed to be all these horrible things of hurting the elder and undermining the plant. And then, So by the time you hear his argument, which should be the right argument, you're like, nah, how could that be right? Because he's the bad guy, and T'Challa's fighting him. And here we're obviously supposed, we're supposed to go through this with Coco. This is Coco's journey. This is, and this is Coco sort of being introduced to a new stage of variations of blackness. That was the other thing that I thought was interesting. Now that we're talking. Why does it seem like this is the first time she's encountering any of these criticisms in this way? And why are her only answer is to say something as vague as I've always been in the Black community. I'm just being myself. There was no elevated level of response to Joy's criticisms.
I wrote down I only rewatched a couple of episodes for those reasons. That is episode two called A Tribe Called Mess.
Mm-hmm.
Which also I was like, oh, Tribe Called Quest, they'll do something cool. Never really made sense.
Well, no,
And then
one, I was like, how many people are going to get that reference? Like, I
that's
saw
a,
that.
that's the thing that's why I'm saying this show is really out of step with a lot of stuff. Like these conversations, like to my experience, I'm a millennial, I'm older. This stuff has moved on. Like I don't quite anyway. I wrote the back and forth they had. So that quote came up. So episode 1 is when they drop her off and her cousin reveals that she's pregnant, she's sad, and then they move into a trivia night, I guess. The next episode moves in. And what's important about that scene is, well, one, it's it's a fun show about trivia night and Black culture, but again, it's since it never delves deeper into what Black culture and politics is, this is now more pernicious to me because it represents Blackness as only, like you said, pop cultural effect. Like there's no real
Right, how it's like the Dave Chappelle show where they did the old sketch about the old takeoff of Jeopardy. How
right.
Black are you? If
Yeah,
you can,
yeah.
remember the theme songs, and all, like they reduced it to that. And this is, I'm not playing it, but this is the scene you're talking about here, and this is where we're introduced to Joy's hostility. She's just out the gate.
More overt hostility.
Just out the gate. So first of all, you've already seen that this Asian woman is here and that she's participating in the evening's events. But it's not until we're already in the middle of this trivia game and that we're already in, and when you lose a point, because remember they're having that little unspoken back and forth, and Coco wins the point, and then it becomes, oh, well, that's just because all that, you've just been studying us and copying us, and she goes off into this whole thing, which I do think raises very interesting and legit questions. I've had students, in various ways over the years bring to me privately or sometimes in the classroom, like they'll say, like, I came here for a Black experience. I'm not interested in seeing a sprinkling of whites and a sprinkling of even other African diaspora folks.
Right.
There's like even that kind of stuff. So like that is maybe my biggest issue with the series, by the way, that I would have loved a series that didn't center the Asian woman and centered anyone else in the like they could have, or anyway, they could have gone into so many, like we don't get into issues of complexion, diaspora.
None.
We don't get into, I mean, the gender and sexuality stuff is there, but not really. Like there's so many other things.
It's outdated.
And it's outdated. So like there's anyway, there's so yeah, why we had to do it this way, I don't know. And then it's not even done in a way that is based in much of the reality of people's lived experience, where you could even say that the show is meant to have make a statement about Asian and Black relations. It's so fantastical. But anyway, yeah, sorry, you wanted to say more about this scene.
No, I wrote that's so the trivia goes back and forth. I wrote some quotes of what they're doing. They talk about phrases that Black families use. They go like, there's the part where, don't start nothing, won't be nothing, which I think wins Coco's point, which is, thrilling. So, and then Joy says, she's another culture vulture. I am not. But this is the part that stuck out to me, because it was not even just a condemnation of Coco. I think it is actually a very unintentional critique of what the show's trying to do and how they also perceive Blackness as like sort of like there's no politics. So like she says, obviously I'm not Black, but my family is. So I don't have to study Black culture because I lived it. And I just wrote, the lived experience is ridiculous, because to understand Black liberation, because the term liberation comes up in the woman's, I'm bringing up stuff that's used terms. I'm not suggesting terms. I just want people to be clear. They're bringing this up. So that's why I'm trying to connect these dots. I'm not like, oh, where's the Black liberation? They do mention it. So the lived experience is ridiculous, because to understand Black liberation, you do need more than lived experience. Everyone does. Everyone. So Coco saying that too, and then like to your case, it was like the winning point. It pissed me off. This is why I was kind of glad she was locked out of class for a minute, because I was like, this is like, You're telling me, um, and then it goes into the next scene where she's depressed about, you know, like what you mentioned. Like, is this the first time you've had this situation come up? Because she was like so torn up by joy that she couldn't get out of bed. I'm like, listen, there's a lot of hardship out there. This is not the least of it. And then joy in that scene, by the way. Yeah, that's it. Oh my god, I watched that again.
I'm wondering, why does she need the head wrap? Like, does she need the head wrapping? I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't know enough about women's hair care, but I just thought that was funny.
People mention that in the chat. They mention that a lot. I read some of the YouTube because they're like, before we even get to the interesting stuff, there's also all this aesthetic stuff that is about blackness being aesthetic, being a costume, which reveals the shallowness of it all. But yeah, she cried. She was crying. She was like, I think she had, and then Treasure, who's the RA, who's also black, comes in and tries to take care of her. It's like, oh my god, is this like the first time you've had this conversation or something? And this is not even that bad. It was one girl being mean to you, and everybody else was on your side saying, "You're amazing, Coco. You're amazing." Right.
No, Joy is the one that's ostracized.
Yes.
That's the thing. That's what you know. So yeah, this was that. That's that. And then to your point, this comes up. Certainly has come up in my classrooms for years, but this whole thing of why do we need Black studies at a Black university when being Black is I am Black, so that's I live it. So there is still some of that as well, even when the context doesn't involve any Asians. And to your point, it's insufficient as an answer. It's Jamil Alameen. It's being Black is wonderful, but it's insufficient. It's you still need a particular study and an analysis and a set of politics that an HBCU theoretically is there to offer, and then Black studies, and then, you know, so this becomes an issue because, by the way, this is also part of the contradiction. That's why Africana and Black studies did not emerge on Black campuses as an academic movement or field. It didn't emerge because they are very socially and politically conservative institutions. So it's an odd but some ways perfectly logical contradiction that the Black Studies movement, and that's why the Black Studies program that and I love to point this out as a sad joke, but the Black Studies program I'm teaching in now at Morgan State University is brand new. It's only a couple of years old, and it's funded by a Mellon grant. So So my point in the end is being Black in a Black space is not in and of itself enough. It's a good start. It's wonderful. Right. It's nice. It's pleasant, but it's not enough. So for her to say that, and for it to be taken uncritically, sort of speaks to my point because the Black people around her are encouraged to believe the same thing. That of course that makes sense. She was raised Black. I was raised Black. We get it. Right. And Joy is supposed to be the one there saying, wait, that's not enough. But she's depicted as the antagonist. The big, dark, Black, angry, loud antagonist who just happens to have many of the right arguments, at least in some form or fashion.
And in the next scene, she is loud because she's talking on her phone and waking her up. And I looked at the time because I rewatched it. It was 7:30 a.m. Coco, you do have a class, so you should, like, again, this is also unrealistic. I'm pretty sure a Joy would not do this. A Joy would not be, like, that's the other thing about the character design. These are also fantastical, to your point. Like, they're just tropes. So this is not meant to be real in any suggestion. But I also want to say, this is also like the idea of, because that stuck out to me for those reasons, a few reasons. It's Coco saying it, but also I really do hate it when folks...
Right. I'm sorry. This is the part you were talking about. Joy is just being unnecessarily loud on the phone. Well, she's depicted as being unnecessarily loud on the phone.
Yeah, she's like moving books, and I'm going to class. And she even says, I need food. It was like, what is going on?
Right.
So I think, can I say, actually talking to you made me realize maybe the creators themselves on the fly realize how how weird this is turning out to be, and maybe that's why they changed it. I don't know how these
Hmm.
things worked, because this is so. When I rewatched it, I mean, I caught it the first time, sure, but I was like just so overwhelmed by the last scene. When I rewatched it, this stuck out to me. I was like, whoa, this is really effed up that they also make this girl like unintentional, like moving desks, moving books. It's like, this is ridiculous levels. She's clearly trying to be mean to Coco, but it's
Hmm.
like this. And again, it goes back. So then it just confounding how she comes up, because I want to read quickly that also part of what she said, because that was fascinating to me when they go to the Black Women Empowerment Group. But I also do think that lived experience stuff is demeaning to Black politics,
Yeah.
because it's like to what you said. It's like I get annoyed when people are like, this is Black political thought, which exists, but then they lump in people in ways you never do to white thinkers. Oh, like, it would be ridiculous if you lump in Marx with Nietzsche or something without any critical view. Like they're talking about the system, you know. Like I'll be like looking at that book, like how is this like? But they, you know, you hear that, like there's no sense of like, oh, there's a range of people, they disagree. So here again, it's like it's the same essentializing and demeaning nature of there is no need to learn Black politics or politics on a campus. You just exude it, you just become it, and
You
then
just, yeah,
finally,
you just
Coco
breathe.
has it. So it's like, what is happening?
She, well, because the well, the point of naming the thumbnail the bell curve is that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that inherently Coco is superior.
Yes,
So
yes,
so once any fields are leveled and playing fields are leveled, she will thrive.
right,
So even in this context of Black politics and Black space, she is going to rise to the top of whatever is considered to be the top. And in this series, that's exactly how it ends.
yeah,
She's the focal point of the resistance.
yes. Oh,
She's she, joy. Joy is there defending her and supporting her. Uh, and it's not as if it's been some Coco level of clarity and advance to catch up to a standard appropriately set by Joy. It's Joy sort of being seen as rescinding back, and we're supposed to see her as
right.
being. Oh
Mm-hmm.
no! It's like that. It's like the shit I grew up on in the '80s.
Mm-hmm.
It's oh no, the tough exterior. No, she's softened, and now we see that she's the aggressive expression of her politics was really just her overcompensating or trying to address some underlying deep-seated issue that
Right,
she
right.
will now transcend, and now we can all be friends and you know, whatever. But again, it's not in that old terrible metaphor, or or analogy. It's not Martin radicalizing to Malcolm. It's supposed to be Malcolm softening to King,
Right,
as
right,
opposed to them both radicalizing together. And so we
right.
don't get that's how I was also kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
seeing what we're getting here at the end.
Right,
Um, with again those radical critiques, or what should be radical critiques that Joy was raising throughout, they're dismissed as immature and themselves outdated and something to overcome. Now that we see Coco is as much a
it's also meant to be
struggler.
kind of like, it becomes, rather than being a place where the characters, again, joys don't exist that way. That's one thing we've said. That's the other formula here that's missing. Like Joy, if there's a Joy character, she would not be this way towards Coco. First of all, she'd probably call her in, but she wouldn't. That's the thing that also aggravates me, like you mentioned too. Like that's also wrong. But then the other thing, to your point, her politics become cute idiosyncrasies, because there is
Mhm.
this one scene where they're at the counter talking about if all the really like cool women who pass on, but then you're allowed to keep one as your guardian angel. It's important to say guardian angel to protect you. That's key, not as an influence. Two of the women bring up, Coco brings up, one of the women bring up Beyonce, I think, and then one of them brings up Rihanna, and then um, Joy says Harriet Tubman, which is the correct answer, as a protector. And then they were like, "Oh yeah, you're right," but they have a fun with her. Like they said something like, "Yeah, you have we expect that answer from you." So she
Right.
also gets turned into an idiosyncrasy, like a cute thing. Like, "Oh, you have your thing," which is talking about this thing, like being like having relationships. And also, it's interesting. Joy. does not have a relationship
at all.
at all.
Hetero, homo,
nothing. Nothing.
Platonic,
Right.
romantic,
None.
familial. She got nothing.
Nothing. She is a empty signifier. And like you said earlier,
in fact, to your point in that scene, the way they depict it, she probably wasn't talking to anybody on the phone.
Yeah.
She was probably pretending. I just gotta get something to eat.
Right. I need food. I remember that because I was like, who talked? Like, it's such a, I don't want to curse, but I was deeply pissed off at the level of demeaning nature to this. So yeah, she wasn't talking to anybody, and she's also studying. And then other people are like, "Oh, Coco, your beautiful brain." I'm like, "What is this show?" Like, Joy is studying. Like,
Joy's the one studying, but because Joy, but that's the point, though. Joy has to just to keep up.
Oh, I didn't even.
Coco doesn't. Coco again.
Joking. That's so true. I didn't even.
Coco is just innately superior.
Oh, I didn't realize.
So Joy is the big, black, dark, loud, ignorant. Has to work hard, has no friends, has no family, has literally nothing. We don't even see her walking with anybody until she's pledging, until she's forced to sit with her roommate. She literally is forced to work with Coco. And so like we don't see, she has no interaction until we see her pledging. So she's completely, she's just out there. This is what I'm saying. Like, and it goes back to the way they did the brother in all those old shows and in movies and, Menace to Society and Boys. And, like, there's always that one dude is like, yeah, go get your bean pie. Assalamu alaikum. He probably always talk about Malcolm. And then they do the same thing. And of course, he would say Harriet. And it's like, and then, of course, no disrespect to Harriet. But again, Harriet is part of what I jokingly refer to as the Black History starter pack. So everybody gets some reference to Harriet. It's usually out of context and with nothing. But like, she definitely wouldn't have said Asada, or she definitely wouldn't have said Sophia Bakari or something crazy like that. It would have been. It's easy to say Harriet, and then because of course you should fight against slavery, and then of course it's Harriet, because of course you the big black slave escapee yourself, like
Well, oh wow. I didn't even think, because I'm just being honest for everyone.
Magical Asian. That's exactly what she is.
I'm not trying to, I didn't even pick that, because I know I mentioned Charles Murray on acid, but I was confounded by Joy's ascent and descent, because you're right. I didn't even think that's so true, because in a lot of scenes, Joy is the one who's like, I'm studying. And then Coco's like sitting on her, I got so annoyed. She's sitting on her bed, talking to 2 guys, 3 guys.
Yeah, and when she's in her study work group with the dude, they end up kissing, and then and meanwhile she's getting texted from the other dude.
And also, Joy is correct.
Kissing her, the other one's setting up a date with her.
And Joy was correct in saying, "Why are you doing it here?" Like, someone commented, and I was like thinking, because I teach, but I don't go into like random dorm settings to see what's up, but just like. Yeah, I remember like you have communal settings. Like I dorm, you have a lounge. Oh yeah, why? And they're doing also what's that thing? Like when you put things together, images. They were cutting things out of magazines.
Oh yeah, collage.
Come on, that again was also, I don't know why that stuck out to me, but I was like I know I hate on a lot. I understand completely how people may talk to, like, I get the same comments, but that annoyed me to no end. I was like, are you just cutting images from
doing middle school projects now?
What does this convey about the HBCU, which is not real? No one's doing that. No, I never. I do Asian American studies and race knowledge, but I never had a situation where I'm like, you know what you guys need to do? You need to like figure out who's black and brown and South Asian in these images and see how they're dressed. And that happened to me in middle school. Like, see the the identities and how they're seen, and just. I didn't really.
Now I will say, to be fair, because I watched what is still one of my favorite documentaries series, Wormwood. The son of Frank Olson, who was the NSA agent, famously, as they start at the beginning of the documentary, he was either thrown, jumped, or fell out of that hotel window in 1950 whatever to his death in New York City. And the Wormwood is about Frank Olson's son investigating his father's death and the long history of biological warfare, chemical warfare, psychological warfare. I mean, it's a fascinating series. But what Frank Olson's son, whose name I should remember, I've seen this documentary so many times, but his son did at Harvard for his whatever thesis in psychology, he did something, he created what he calls the collage method of psychotherapy, where the creation of collages is apparently supposed to have some, I don't know. It's just discussed a little bit in this documentary that there is supposed to be, and because he went to Harvard, of course, and is white, it's supposed to have a higher level. I don't know. He's saying there's a method psychologically. So I'm just saying, just to be fair to them.
No, I get it. But Jared,
I want to acknowledge that exists, even as I'm sitting here agreeing with you, sitting there saying, like, what the hell are they doing? And why is this necessary to be done when Joy's trying to study?
Jared, but the context is crazy. Like, it would be one thing, I totally get if there was like a collage scene and then there was like a scene of like who the major figures of the university are and something deeper. But in the context of it, it just reinforces how stupid. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm just like,
we don't see what they're doing.
I have no idea. It just seems like they're just collaging and then they just make out and then it's like, that's it. And then that's what, and before, like, so there's this scene with we need to, the Women's of Excellence, because that's the part where
come on, let's because I do. I gotta unfortunately get ready for this thing at 12.
So the Women's of Excellence,
folks, come back at 12. We're having the Shaka Shakur political prisoner roundtable. Yeah, sorry,
which is the contrast. Like
the contrast is a pretty sharp contrast that we're doing here today.
Oh my god!
But
So I wrote down some of the conversation. So there's a Black female professor who talks about ethnic studies, and she says, we have to ask ourselves, how do we think of ethnic studies as pedagogy, as tools for liberation? So again, liberation does come up. And then one of the classmates, another Black woman, she does have, so there's a Black female who does say, what is the difference between multiculturalism and ethnic study, which is a good question. And she does say multicultural education often stops at celebrating diversity, highlighting holidays, foods, flags. Ethnic studies goes deeper. It challenges systems. It interrogates history. It's not just about representation. It's about resistance. Yes, that's the scene. So, and on the chalkboard, they have things said, critique systems of exploitation, reveal the ethical failings of domination, raise awareness around issues like racism and sexism. And then she finally says to Coco, who also says, it's kind of stunning that this stuff that I'm looking at the syllabus again. They never mention what's on the syllabus. They don't go vague. It's vague. She said, I've read the syllabus. It seems like it's an affront that we don't learn this stuff sooner. And then the professor's like taken in by that. She's like, wow, this student's so smart. So then she says, ethnic studies has always been under attack. We're witnessing states banning diversity, equity, inclusion, removing Black authors, blah, 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 blah. And this is the important part. It's all in the guise of neutrality, but silence is not neutral. It is complicit. So I bring this up because then the next scene, I'm like, oh, wow, this might be actually okay-ish. She offers the Black woman and Coco special invitations to Women's in Excellence Club, which I'm thinking is going to be not a sorority. Like maybe just
right, because that's what I said too. I said, oh wait, because I kept waiting. I said, where are the step shows? Where's the frats and sororities? I said, right. Wow, where's the marching band? These are the tropes we usually get with HBCUs. So, oh wow, they're not doing that. I said, okay, maybe there's a positive column here. Okay, then they do this. I've said, okay, wait a minute, this is interesting because your point. I actually thought that was good. The multicultural versus ethnic studies. Yes. I was like, wow, okay, and then. Go ahead.
Well, do you want to say what happens next?
No, I'm leaving it to you. I just wanted to co-sign that I'm with you. That I thought you were on this. I was like, we're going somewhere.
which is the trick that you talk about, the setup. So they get this flyer where they have to do business casual or something. That becomes the story. Coco tells Joy, business casual, because Joy, I guess, is wearing something more not business casual. Exactly. So Joy is telling her, and eventually all these women gather. They get this invitation. That invitation is for everybody. So they get this invitation. They all gather at the sorority steps. They're Thank you for these. I can't explain this. My mind is running a mile a minute. But so these women are there. That's the professor right there with the earrings, right? With the promise. So she's like there. So she's there. And then they're like looking at them and they enter and you get the sense, wait a minute. So they're like, this is a very classist.
No, first they send somebody home.
For the business attire. They said, you did not read. And then one of the women says, not the professor, I guess, but one of the shorter women says, oh, reading is part of the thing. So if you don't know. So I'm like, wait a minute. Are you then, what is the point of this? You're basically turning everything that was good on its head. And then finally, all that happens in the professor disappears, right? There's no more professor. They have scenes of the sorority where with the other three women, it is abusive, which is fine. I think I saw someone say it happens. That's not the issue. These things happen. The issue, it's being connected to what I just read.
Right.
That's the issue.
That's right.
That's the issue. It's not, it happens. I think it's great. They're showing it's abusive, but also that's the scene. At the end, they're all proud of being in the sorority. But where's the excellence part? I am so confused by how a professor, why did they do that? Like, why did they have a scene where I just read that? That was pretty hefty stuff where it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. They're making these diversions. But then they quickly, step on it to be like, well, it's really about getting food for, I guess, the older girls?
Getting food. It's the whole Diddy walk across Brooklyn Bridge to get me a donut. It's the stand next to somebody, remember everybody's name and remember everybody's favorite color. And it's supposed to build unity and all of that. But it's the same. Again, it's nothing more than what we would have ever seen from Spike Lee's School Days or the Netflix series that came out more recently, that where pledging and abuse is meant to convey solidarity.
Right.
But it's never done with any sort of criticism. Like, why do we need to go through this to create sisterly solidarity? Why do we, what are we doing here? If there's any positive, I guess you could say, at least they weren't naming themselves after another Greek organization.
Right.
But Women of Excellence,
right?
Whoa! Right. I was just like, so what's whoa? I was like, whoa! And then what makes them excellent? What do they do? Dress in business attire, and I don't know. Are we supposed to see that next season where they become revolutionary? I don't know.
And I know you have to, and just really quickly.
No, go ahead, finish.
Because the next thing Joy is. So then after this, since they're tied together like this, that's part of the sorority pledge now. They have to like work together and stick to the other, do everything the other person does. There's a scene where Coco goes with Joy to a Black empowerment group, which is called, I think, Black Girls Justice. And what's interesting is that they do a prayer. So Coco does sit on the side while all these Black women are meeting. And a woman leading the prayer says, God, please guide and protect us as we come together to be of service to the Black women in our lives and the Black women in our community. Let us be reminded that it's our duty to fight for our freedom. Again, I'm not doing this. This is in the show. Fight for our freedom. And it is our duty to win. We have nothing to lose but our change. I'm just saying to everyone, I'm not imposing anything. This is said. But what's interesting, I don't know if you saw, did you get the feeling too, like it was such a funny thing that they have, so while this prayer is being said as a voiceover, you see the women talking about issues and agreeing with each other. But again, you never get into the issues. You just have this long prayer.
No, I thought that's a very good point that you make. You get the prayer, and then you don't get any of the issues that they get to. You just see sort of Coco sitting in the back, And again, just to reiterate, Coco's only at this all Black woman event because the sorority demands that the pledge process. So this was the other thing. Where was there the moment? Because I was wondering, where was there the moment where Joy explains to this group why Coco is there, and the group has a discussion privately as to whether that's appropriate? Right. The fact that you're pledging doesn't mean that you should be able to bring people into this space that aren't like, what are we doing? Is she just going to sit in the corner? But again, it doesn't matter if she's sitting in the corner listening to this important discussion that we never hear as an audience because we just get to see them nodding and and coming together. So who knows what they're uniting around? And it obviously doesn't. It's not something that is offensive or threatening to poor little Coco, because she's like, oh,
Right.
I've learned so much. This is so important, and
Right.
this is what helps them transcend. And then for eventually Coco to become the
Well,
leader.
yeah. So to rush through that to get to that last part. So the speech that also Joy gives to her, because Coco's like, wow, that was really fun. Or not fun, to her credit, I guess. She's like, wow, I would bring my cousin to this. That was the first thing. So I was like, all right, that's pretty relevant. But then she said, I would love to do more stuff with this, right? And that's when, and then she said, I'm shocked, about, and then she couldn't finish. Exactly. None of that, we don't hear any of it. That's just the prayers going over as a voiceover. So there's enough time for us to have at least one discussion of something significant that doesn't come up. So in the end, she says, Joy says, well, if you want to help, you have to do your own research. She gets offended as she's shocked. And use your privilege when beneficial. Because as someone who comes from a Black family, you shouldn't be shocked. Again, why wasn't this in episode 1 or 2 as a starting point, as a real story? Why is this episode 5? This is basic stuff. Because I'm like, this is not, I would have questions of Coco that way at episode 2. So it's
Coco's
crazy.
family I can't imagine that this would have never come up in Coco's family. Are you saying that there was never a discussion in all the years she was growing up about her light-skinned Asian privilege?
Right.
In
the whole community, just like, because the first scene of the show is so weirdly disconnected, because the first scene is not of Coco really. It's a big reveal she's Asian, just
right,
whatever. But the first thing is the mom going through like I guess
a like a
yeah, where she's like reference. So I rewatched and I was like, wait a minute, like this show, if you watch it the first time, you're thinking it's going to be set here and you'll get to know all the characters more, because that's what you get the invitation for. Like the mailman, like, oh, I thank you for the food, and there's like a joke about someone cooking something that's Coco sick. All that's thrown out, and it's just become a very basic, weird journey now to what you're saying. Because I remember you said last time that Joy is also playing this sort of caretaker role. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens. Like, and then the last scene is, do you want to talk about the last scene before? Because I think you've been like gearing up for it.
Well, honestly, I was almost blown away by what was happening. And how quickly, because again, it's all, first of all, it's all happening so fast. There's no, it's just almost out of nowhere that we start to get this police conflict that I honestly don't even, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't even remember how we got there.
It's because Tammy, she had come from the town. It's a long thing, and she was coming on a train, I guess, and she was meaning to meet Justin, which is implied to be the guy who I think is her boyfriend or something. That's the guy right there, not the white dude, but the guy.
This guy back
with
here.
The hat. So that's what happened. Oh my God, I'm sorry.
See, this is there. That was it right there. That was
the timing of it is like, oh my God, Joy running to her and I didn't even realize that.
So because you get the whole thing, so then so somehow Coco becomes the focal point and the spokesperson for the group, and it becomes so like initially I was thinking, are they going to do like the very old Chappelle joke where it used to be you're supposed to have your one white friend in the car with you to deal with the police?
Right.
Like, is this what they're doing a version of? And then I so I don't know what was. So she has this standoff with this one cop, and then he leaves, and then Joy comes over. They all like converge on her, like she's the only one that experienced anything and the only one that did anything. And I'm like, it was such.
God, that can you? And then she looks into the camera and says, "I thought I knew everything or something, but I knew nothing or something." I was like, what the? She looks into the camera.
I know you all can't hear this. I just want to hear.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought I knew everything. Turns out I know nothing. And then it goes to black. And that's it. So I guess that's the tease for the next season. But just to reiterate where a point you raised earlier, again, why we watch this is because we're working on a project largely critical of the narratives involving Black and Asian experiences economically specifically. to me, my sort of headline conclusion here is that this kind of media product is what creates so many of the dominant narratives that help shape what end up becoming people's economic and political analyses.
Yeah.
And yeah, I at the end of the day, this is just disrespectful to everybody's experience.
Sorry, I don't know.
I mean, seriously, like even the context of a Korea, like why are these black military parents over there in the first place?
That's what, there's so much else I know you have, but that's the other thing I wanted to raise, which is also not to be on Coco's side at all, because this was really annoying watching that scene. I didn't even realize Joy running up to her, because I was like, when you're watching first time, your mind is like water off your fort. You're just like, what is happening? Is this so? You said it's so fast. Because the guys also made the problem. I didn't know who the guy was. I had to rewatch it.
Like I don't want people to think you and I skipped any. Like we didn't do anything to this.
We didn't edit it. We didn't do anything.
Just pops in,
and he's a problem. So that was strange. Like he's arguing with his, I guess and also Tammy has an abortion. That was like also Coco does not call Tammy back when she's having this dilemma. Remember? And so Coco gets away with a lot of weird shit. It's like horrible. It's like your cousin, your friend, you did not really even
she was also late to be picked up by Joy and her sorority crew.
That's so true.
Because she was on a date.
Yep.
And then she overslept or something like that.
It's
so
wild.
Like Coco is not this
No.
But she's already been set up as the protagonist, Joy in particular the antagonist. So whatever each of them does is framed in that way. And then by the end, when we get to see, oh no, and it's not done in a way where, especially because of the way it ends so abruptly, it's not done in a way where the audience is invited to reconsider what they thought of Joy and her positions.
True.
And her. It's not done that way.
No.
It's meant to say, oh no, Joy has learned. To play her role and console the protagonist. God damn it.
This is a buddy cop movie without real updates, right? This is a buddy cop movie. Like, I didn't even realize it. Because in the end, there are things about Coco's background that would have been fascinating. The Korea angle. Like there's a review by an Asian American woman, I think, at ASAM News, if anyone wants to read it, and she was critical of how they didn't even discuss what you just mentioned, the military part of Korea. Right?
Please send me that. I'll read it and add it to the show.
I liked it. I thought there were some things like I think both sides. Like there's an article on Allure that obviously dismantles the BS that we have considered already. But there's also this other side where, well, why isn't there any input from an adoptee or Asian, like not to say that's, but they're the lived experience. Like, okay, so you don't have, I don't know if there's any Asian, I'm not saying this is the main thing you need to consider, but I was also thrown off by that. If you're following that principle, you don't have anyone who's maybe from a more, and I would prefer a radical Korean American experience. And they are groups that you've interviewed also with Renee who've done this work, who would say, yeah, and they would be normal too. They'd be like, yeah, the anti-blackness is real. Like no one's not normal, but they present every side as already being. They present a history where Malcolm X never existed. How about that? They present a narrative of a timeline where, in fact, he is just Denzel on that poster. Because all these topics have come up before. Assata Shakur, to your point, sorry, I'm just like my brain. Assata Shakur went to California to talk to Asian folks. And she's a black nationalist, revolutionary. She would not stand for this stuff. This is also a dismissal of, this is basically saying, let's do something like Fukuyama, end of history, where we don't ever have to deal with the real traditions. This is also a dismissal of the actual traditions of liberation. There's never a thing I read where they're like, I'm black, I don't want any Asians. Like I found that horrible to suggest that. Like Malcolm X talked about China and India because
Joy is supposed to be the more politically radical, advanced
that's what I mean.
person who makes these arguments, and that's the point. So she comes off as just a narrow nationalist who's just angry. Right. And again, because it's it's the Killmonger effect of anything that should be depicted as positive politics have to be framed as a negative,
right?
And spoken through the behavior and actions of these characters we're supposed to see as unlikable. So we're not supposed to see Joy as physically attractive, although I happen to think, I don't want to be overly disrespectful with whatever, but I actually. had thought she was quite attractive. But I think the intent is we're not supposed to see her as attractive. We're not supposed to see her as either physically and certainly not socially or emotionally, and definitely not politically.
Right.
And they do everything to make that clear. And as we pointed out, starting with the fact that she has no family, she has no friends,
no family, none. This is very similar to other things we've watched where there is a considered effort in terms of counterinsurgency to reinvent the wheel of these topics. Because these things have been touched upon by other people, right? There is nothing new about this. Asada Shakur has talked about this. Claudia Jones has talked about difference. Asian American radicals have learned from those. Yuri Kochiyama, like, she was a Puerto Rican national. Like, what I'm saying, what's so awful about this is that they're trying to do a couple of things. I think maybe Erica has mentioned this on the Black Liberation Morning Show, where she says, whenever you also hear certain creators now saying, I haven't seen myself in shows, like I haven't, they're also reinventing the timeline. Because in the 90s, I'm not saying it's perfect, but in the 90s and all these places, there were these shows. They just want to throw it away and say, oh, what do you mean you see? Like, I'm looking at a poster like, wait, who's that woman? Asada. Oh, you don't see anything. You don't see anything. It's this. We never talked about it. Are you serious? We have. It's just that you don't want to talk about it. So that's the other thing that was so fundamentally weird. It was like, am I supposed to pretend this is new? This is not new.
Listen, my last note is that for this one, and we can always do another one. We can come back to this. We don't have to just because I have to go. We don't have to. But my last note for today would be that the worst thing about this is that it makes me reflect more positively on Spike Lee's film catalog, because if we're talking about HBCUs depicted in pop culture, School Days, which came out 40 years ago.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Did much more to engage, honestly, the politics of race, class, international solidarity with the anti-apartheid stuff, with colorism, with,
right.
Again, it's not a perfect film, but my point is 40 years later, we're walking backwards. This is not an advance on what Spike did 40 some odd years ago. And we're in some trouble because
we have Coco instead of that. We have Coco and an Irish vampire guy doing a fiddle and people losing their. So that's what we have now. I don't want to be rude to anybody, but that's what we've ended up with.
I'm gonna let's just end it right there. Listen, Sudip, thank you very much for allowing us to have these meetings publicly. It's been a lot of fun. I look forward to the next one. Folks, please do stay tuned. We have to give our project a name, something I think should still have the Donut King in it. But
yes.
But as we have our Donut King meetings and discussions going forward, we'll let you know. So please stay tuned, like, share, subscribe, do all those other things. Thank you all for joining us here live. If you are here live, please come back in 20 minutes for our political prisoner roundtable in an attempt to free Shaka Shakur. Tomorrow, Black Liberation Media, Millennials Are Killing Capitalism are also uniting for broadcast in solidarity, Palestinian solidarity, and particularly around the killing of Rafat al-Arir. Sorry. And so, folks, stick around and come back for that as well. So, but again, Sudip, thank you very much. This has been great. I look forward to the next one. Peace, everybody. Only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. And we'll see you next time with more.
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything, 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 everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.